Welcome to our next installment of Maps in History. Today we're going to be looking at two maps from World War I, the Great War. That's the title for our Maps in History unit today. These are maps that do not include the United States, and that is by design. What we're talking about in lecture and reading about are developments that occur largely in Europe during this short period that have a huge effect upon American society. But in order to understand those effects on American society and to understand how American society gets embroiled in these changes, we need to understand the geography of Europe during this period. So we're going to focus on a little bit of European geography and a little bit of military geography to understand the broader developments around Woodrow Wilson and other things that we discuss in detail in lecture and in our readings and response papers. So on our first map here, we have Europe on the eve of World War I and during the early years of the Great War. And I want you to notice three things on this map. First, this is a map of empires, There are not lots of nation states. In fact, this Europe looks very different from the Europe we're accustomed to seeing. If you look carefully, you will see there is a large Germany and an Austro-Hungarian Empire and a large Russia and a large Great Britain and a large France. There are a lot of things missing. You should notice Poland is missing. You should notice the Czech Republic is missing. And you should notice that these fewer countries are much larger. This is a world of empires. This is really important because the United States is contending with these empires that are fighting each other. They are not nation states fighting each other. Second thing you should notice in this map is that there is still an Ottoman Empire down here. Much of what we consider the contemporary Middle East is part of this Ottoman Empire, which is crumbling at this time. This is an important phenomenon too. You have these big empires in Europe fighting each other, and then you have at the bottom, in the southern area, you have this Ottoman Empire, which is a collection of what we will later call Middle East states, states like Syria, Iraq, and others. They are right now part of this empire that is barely holding together. The same is true to some extent for the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Third thing I want you to see on this map are these other lines here, which are the lines of the battles. This one here, this purple line here, is as far as German forces get in the east. And this is the line where they are when the Russian state collapses. And we have the Bolshevik Revolution that we'll discuss in lecture, the revolution that brings the first communist government into power, and the signing of a treaty that gives a lot of this land to Germany. And this square here, is as far west as the German forces get. All of the fighting is on Russian, Belgian, French territory, not on German territory. That's really important. The Germans will lose the war, but the fighting will have occurred on other people's territory. That's really important because many Germans will not believe they actually lost this war. They'll think that the argument that they lost the war is fake news, because they didn't fight on their territory. They didn't actually lose territory. They were fighting on other people's territory when they lost the war. So a world of empires, a Middle East under Ottoman control in transition, and German armies moving east and west doing most of their fighting off of their own territory. That's the world of World War I, and that's the context in which the United States, and Woodrow Wilson in particular, are making policy. Now our next map shows us what happens after the war. This is the post-Versailles settlement that we talk about, and you should see a very different Europe here. Countries Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Yugoslavia, Romania, Bulgaria. They didn't exist before. There was a little bit of a Romania before, Austria, but most of these countries did not exist before. Lithuania, East Prussia, Latvia. Notice there are these new nation states. As we will talk about in lecture, as you will read, this is a period after World War I when you have a flowering of new nation states. This is the period of self-determination, as Wilson and David Lloyd George talk about it. These are also states where the Soviet Union, this new entity that takes over Russia, this communist entity, will seek to influence this area. So we have new states and new influences on these states. Second important phenomenon here, we also have the beginnings of the breakup of the British Empire. You will notice that Ireland, part of Ireland, with the exception of Northern Ireland, becomes the Irish Free State. The Irish Free State will be symptomatic of the breakup of the British Empire. Many of these other empires are coming apart, but the breakup of the British Empire is particularly important for the United States because the United States will have interest in maintaining its own access to those areas. As we seek to eliminate the British Empire, we will seek to move into some of the areas where the British are operating for trade reasons and later for political and security reasons. Final point here, our Middle East. Look at what's happening to our Middle East. We're getting new nation states there. Turkey, The Turkish Revolution, led by Ataturk, will create a new state in Turkey. Ataturk is, in a sense, the great-grandfather of the present leadership, Erdogan. They're not familially related, but you could see similarities in the development of a strong, almost dictatorial state in Turkey, and you will see other Middle Eastern states arising. The modern Middle East as we know it, of Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Israel, comes out of this period. This is the beginnings of those states after World War I. It is the beginnings of new states in Europe. It is the end of empire, and it is the rise of a new alternative in Russia, as well as the United States. The United States becomes the big external actor, moving into this complex, shattering space after World War I. And that will not only structure our discussion of World War I, but the entire 20th century, because this Europe here is also the Europe of today. It is the beginning of our present issues, our present possibilities, and our present conflicts over Europe and the Middle East. That is the world of Versailles, it's the world of World War I, and it's the world the United States moves into the 20th century. See you all in lecture.